G'day, I'm Paul. I've been waiting a while to drive this. It is the Subaru BRZ. It of course shares a platform with the Toyota 86 or 86, depending on which part of the world you're from. This is an interesting car because in a world where we're moving to EV and everything's got an auto or a CVT of some description, this is a rear-wheel drive manual sports car, and I think this is very rare, especially today. So this competes with things like the Toyota 86 because it kind of shares the platform with it, the Mazda MX-5, and it doesn't really have any other competitors outside of that because the rest are kind of just front-wheel drive hot hatches. So it is kind of in a world of its own. In Australia, this top spec here, the S variant, is priced at a little over $40,000 for the 6-speed manual that we have here. But if that's too expensive, the entire range kicks off at a little under 39 grand. So the S just gives you a couple of extra sort of bells and whistles. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. So if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of the review, you can use the time codes on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, scroll down. We have some chapters down there for you. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, press the bell icon so you can find out every single time I get attacked by flies. Let's talk exterior design. So you've got 7 external colors to pick from, and they are all free of charge. What do you reckon about this design? I think it is just the perfect evolution from the old car. So this doesn't sit on a brand new platform. It's kind of just a modified version of the existing platform. So beneath the skin, it's fairly similar. In terms of the dimensions, it has changed a little bit. So it's 25mm longer than the outgoing model, sits 15mm lower, and the wheelbase is 5mm longer as well. So a couple of little tweaks there, but outside of that, it's mainly the same. Over here, you've got a set of LED headlights with the washers built into there. Down here, you've got cooling for that little 2.4 litre engine, and of course, Subaru badge. This is the only non-all-wheel drive Subaru on sale. The rest of Subaru's models are all-wheel drive. So because of that shared platform, they've gone down the path of just adopting whatever Toyota has come up with Subaru's engine. Around the side here, we have a set of 18-inch alloy wheels. Love that design. So pretty basic and straightforward. It's got like a graphite finish to it, and I think it just stands out really nicely, especially here with the blue color. Now, a lot of you jumped up and down when I said Michelins were no good in the wet. What I meant to say was Michelins are no good in the wet until they're warm, and it's the same story here. This morning it was raining and there was just no traction at all. Second they got a little warmer, it was far better. So this runs on a set of Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres. Michelins are my pick of the performance tyre bunch because they really do offer everything from entry-level sports tyre right through to proper sort of R compound tyres. So yeah, big fan of those. Now around the back here, you have a set of air vents that come in through the back of that wheel. Up the top here, you've got a body coloured top to the wing mirror. There is no indicator built into there. It sits right up the front of the car there, and that lights up when you pop the indicator on. It's pretty short. Like, look at me, I'm 185-ish centimetres tall, and you can see where the car sits. So when you do get inside this, make sure you don't have back problems because it is quite low to the ground. So around the back, I quite like this design as well. So it's just so beautifully proportioned. It sticks out nicely at the rear there. Toyota and Subaru really have just gone to a lot of effort to give this a really sporty demeanor out on the road. You've got a set of twin exhaust pipes down the bottom here. And because it was raining this morning, the car is a little bit dirty, but behind there you can see BRZ or BRZ, depending on where you're from. Another Subaru logo and then Subaru lettering. This button here opens the boot. So with one push of that, it cracks open, and then that's where your camera is located, with a brake light built into there and a shark fin aerial at the top. Now, let me know what you think about the design. Do you think this styling change for the BRZ or BRZ and the 86 is good, or do you think they could have done a little bit more? Really keen for your feedback down there. So we're inside the BRZ. Let's start off with the keys. So you've got lock, unlock, boot. Subaru logo is your unlock button, and then it's blank on the back. This looks like every other Subaru key, but it is a proximity sensing key. So you leave that in your pocket, grab the door handle, and then once you're inside, you have a push button start here. So on the design front, look, this car was never really about setting a new standard in luxury sports cars. It really was all about just keeping it simple, and that is exactly what they've done here. And that is also why pretty much every surface is hard and scratchy. And I think that if you're going to be using this as a track car or even as a daily, you probably don't care all that much. They have updated the infotainment system, so it has a Subaru infotainment system that works quite well, and I'll get to that in a second. But the rest of this is all sort of pretty straightforward. What I am excited to play with while we go for a drive are the gauge cluster ahead of the driver here. You can configure a few little different things there, so we'll have a play with that later on. Now, what about your touch points? So that center section, which opens up, is quite soft, and then on the door, it's quite soft as well. How soft are those points? Well, we've got our gyrometer. We've tested the main main surfaces in this cabin. If you want to see how this car compares to others that we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description. Build quality. So let's give this a little shake. It all actually feels really nice and solid. Hey, tell me, if you owned the previous version of the BRZ or the 86, what has build quality been like? Has it been good to live with? Let me know down there. And finally, door test. That sounds pretty good. Okay, let's talk infotainment. One of the things that I really didn't like about the old 86 and the BRZ was the infotainment system. It was like an ancient Toyota unit. This finally has the same infotainment system you'll find on a new Subaru today. So you're getting an 8-inch infotainment screen. So it's a color touchscreen, and then you have shortcut buttons on either side. In terms of your navigation, there is satellite navigation built into the actual head unit itself, or alternatively, you can use smartphone mirroring in the form of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Both of those are wired, so you can see Apple CarPlay there, full screen integration, nice and quick as well. And this is what Android Auto looks like. So again, full screen integration and pretty decent setup. Slightly laggy as you scroll up and down there, but for the most part that looks good. On the radio front, you have AM, FM, and DAB plus digital radio, and that's all plumbed through a 6-speaker sound system. Sound system is okay. It's not going to set the world on fire, so you might have to get an aftermarket one if you do love your music. Now, let's talk about the screen ahead of the driver. So I know the old BRZ had a screen there ahead of the driver, but I think I like the look of this one a little bit better. So you've got all your power and torque stuff, and I'll go over that when we go driving, but included in that screen on the left-hand side are things like your trip computer and then other settings that you can play with as well. And then on the right hand side you have your engine temperature, fuel, outside temperature. So they've kept it pretty simple, but there are a lot of settings in there you can configure if you are doing track days and that kind of thing. So I do like that they have given the driver a lot of opportunity to set it up the way they like it. Now, what about your safety technology? It's a brand new car in 2022. Unfortunately, they have literally stripped this bare of safety technology, and I just can't understand why. So the automatic comes with all the stuff you'd expect, but the manual, on the other hand, really doesn't. All it includes is blind spot monitoring built into the wing mirror, rear cross traffic alert, and a lane change assistant. Outside of that, there is nothing else here. So you don't get any autonomous emergency braking or any of the basic safety stuff that you get on virtually every other car today. And I think it is to do with the manual transmission. But the odd thing is you can get plenty of other cars that have manuals with all of that technology. So pretty disappointing that Subaru has not included that here as part of the BRZ. The disappointment kind of also continues to parking, where here for Australia, we don't get any front or rear parking sensors. All you get is a reverse view camera. And there it is there. Quality is not too bad, actually. And then you have guidelines that move with the steering wheel too. But, you know, it would be nice to have parking sensors and basic safety technology. Moving on to practicality, and we'll start off with your connectivity options. So they're all in here. So let me just ditch that for a sec. You've got one auxiliary outlet for people who still have auxiliary devices, 2 USB-A ports, and you might be asking yourself, where is the 12 volt? Well, the 12 volt is located here in the glove box. It's all the way up there. So there is one, but it is kind of tucked away. Now, what about storing your phone? Well, there is no wireless phone charging, but it can live over here in the cup holder pretty easily. And then on the cup holder, it does not fit my little coffee, and that means the lid's likely to come off. The other problem as well is while you're driving, if you want to get your drink, you got to go all the way back here to grab it, and it is really just a silly position to have it, but it kind of makes sense because you have a manual handbrake here instead of the electronic type, so it eats into all of your space. Anyway, in terms of the rest of our bottles, so that fits in there normally, but no teeth, so it does move around a little bit. And then you have bottle storage here inside the door. I am curious to see if our big bottle fits in there, because that is a giant cavity. Look at that, it does. That is pretty cool. So that's a very clever use of that space. Instead of having this up the top here, they've kind of lowered it down so you can get the bottle in without any dramas at all. And then you also have a glove box as well, reasonably sized. And like I mentioned, that's where you're going to find your 12 volt outlet. Now, what about your comfort functions? Well, you have dual zone automatic climate control. Bumping yourself up to the S grade brings with it heated seats that you operate here. I do like these seats. They have a high back to them that really hugs you in nicely. The S-Pack brings the Alcantara Sahara sort of suede finish here, and also atop the gauge cluster. Love the red stitching straight through the center there as well. They are a really good seat. The other big bonus as well is that you can remove the headrest so you can have a helmet in the car without constantly whacking your head there. You can turn it around as well if you want to, and that will support the helmet without pushing your head forward. Steering wheel offers just tilt and reach adjustment. It's all manual, and then the seat controls are all entirely manual for both the driver and front passenger as well. And our reach test, well, all of this stuff is very easy to reach while you're driving. Now let's talk about the second row. Oh, I'm going to climb in here. Now, actually you can hear all those noises, my knees creaking and stuff. Now this is made for petite people, and I'm not petite. I do like petite Fords, but I'm not petite. So really, realistically, this is going to be a very occasional use second row. Even with my driver's seat pretty much all the way forward, I wouldn't be able to drive in that position. I still can't fit back here. But you do get ISOFIX points, and that means you can stick a child seat in here if you need to. And look, to be honest, Igor will be in here when we're doing our driving, so he can fit in here uncomfortably, but he still can, and I think that means that, you know, if you do need to use it, you can if you want to. Obviously, 2 seats, nothing here in the second row except the driveline that runs down the center of the car. Now let's talk about cargo space. So obviously this is not an SUV, so you're not going to have a great deal of it. You have a little over 200 litres of cargo space there, and that's partly thanks to this. It's a full-size spare tyre, and look, I'm not actually that concerned about the boot space. The fact that you actually get a full-size spare on an alloy wheel is pretty cool. I think if you did fit a space saver, you could then have a flat floor if you wanted to, but you do have little bits of storage off to the side for your tools and stuff like that. Yes, it is going to be hard to fit stuff into there, as I'll demonstrate right now. And outside of that as well, you don't really have any other sort of creature comforts in there. So laptop bag fits in, and then our suitcase. This is around the size of a carry-on bag for the plane, so you can see there it just sort of fits in, and that will be able to close without any dramas at all. Now, if you do need a little bit more space, you can actually drop the second row. So it means you obviously can't have any passengers in there. Not that you could really fit any passengers anyway, but it gives you a little bit more load space to, you know, put your other spare tyres in. So we've hit the road in the BRZ. Let's start off with the engine. So it has been increased in terms of its size. So it's gone from a 2 litre to a 2.4 litre, and now it produces 170 kilowatts of power and 249 newton meters of torque. So that's up 18 kilowatts and 39 newton meters of torque over the previous generation engine. And that's a good thing, because the previous one was good, but it just needed a little bit more as the rev band went around. It was really fun to drive above, 3, 4, 5,000 RPM, but it felt like it ran out of steam. So with a 2.4, you've got a little bit more capacity to work with, and a lot of people modified their cars anyway, so it was kind of irrelevant how much it made out of the box. This just gives you a stronger set of internals to work with before you go do your modifications. So what does all that feel like behind the wheel? Well, given it hasn't changed a great deal over the last one in terms of the chassis, it actually feels really good. So I love the sonorous note these have. You can hear a little bit of that getting plumbed into the cabin through the speakers, but for the most part, it's actually quite a fun sounding engine, and it's a lot more eager now. So if we drop back to third here at that 4,000 RPM mark and punch it, it feels ready to move. It's really sort of wanting to get up and move a whole lot faster. So really impressed with that. Now, what's the gearbox like? So we don't really talk about gearboxes all that much in terms of the way that they feel, but this is so nice. It's super notchy. There's no rev matching or anything else like that. You're doing it all yourself, and it just feels really mechanical and just fun to drive with. Every input you make here has a direct correlation to what's going on under the bonnet. So love the way that feels, and I love how direct it all is. So Subaru claims a combined fuel economy of 9.5 litres per 100 Ks. Let's have a look at what we're doing here. 10.6. It's pretty awesome, given we had some fun in the car this morning, and 10.6 litres per 100 Ks is such a nice figure for a car that you can have fun in, flog the absolute bejesus out of, and then not have to cry every single time you fill it up at the petrol station. Now, speaking of which, down here where that trip computer is, you've actually got some cool little applications. So you've got a torque and power band. As it sort of increases there, you can see that moving. You've got a little G bubble, you've got a lap timer as well, so it's a pretty cool setup that you have to play with there as standard. Now, what's it like in terms of the ride? So no adaptive dampers or anything like that. We're going to crank this up just a little bit to highway speeds as we approach our sine waves here. We'll see how it copes with this. It's actually really good over those sine waves, so that's great news there in terms of the suspension setup. You will have noticed I'm having to yell at you now, even at 100 k's an hour here. It is super noisy at highway speeds. You can barely hear yourself think over that tyre roar. There is a little bit of wind noise coming into the cabin as well. Again, not the end of the world when you look at this as an application. It is a sports car in that sense, so I don't think it's going to be changing anyone's mind in terms of a purchase. So let's put it into sport mode. Well, it is in sport mode. The only thing you can do here is put it into track stability mode, and we'll do that. Dial up the speed a little bit here. Drop back to second for our corner. The brakes feel really nice and confident. Plow it through here. That feels great. Quick gear shifts there as well. Wow, it really just hangs on, doesn't it? That is really good. It is moving. I'm really shocked by this. Despite being not all that powerful, it is honking along nicely. And one of the big differences here compared to the old one is the available grip and traction that you have. The old one really was just constantly battling for traction before you got rid of those stock tyres. This, on the other hand, is just really just ploughing on the speed and through these fast sweepers. It has a degree of body roll, but it doesn't unsettle the car even as you hit a bump mid-corner. So yeah, really impressed with this. And tell you what, I think if you strapped a turbo or a supercharger to this would be just in another league of fun. Now, Subaru doesn't have, or I can't find an official 0 to 100 time, so we're just going to pop it up against our stopwatch. We'll see how it goes. So I've switched stability control off here just to give us a little bit more wheel slip off the line, and we will see how it goes. Now, what you won't have seen on the camera there, because we only used one shot of that, I couldn't see the rev gauge because our GoPro's in the way here, but Igor, who's crammed into the back there, made a really good point. I can use the power band there to give us a better idea of when to shift, because once you reach the end of the power band, you're not really sort of making any more progress. So that's what we did on that last one, and it felt the best way to do it. So if you have bought a BRZ, don't use your tacho, use the power band instead. Now, after we finished driving, I was playing around with this screen here, and you can actually set your own rev indicator. So if you go into the rev menu, you can adjust when the shift indicator comes up, and you can even then associate a buzzer with it as well. So yeah, that's actually a really cool setup, and it makes driving this harder even easier because you can dictate exactly when you should be shifting gears, even if you can't see the speedo. So the new Subaru BRZ. Look, I'm a guy that loves a bit of power, a big old V8 or a fast EV or something like that. But I tell you what, I've had so much fun in that today. It's a big improvement over the old one in terms of power and torque delivery. It feels much punchier in the mid-range, and it still retains all of those fun to drive characteristics, except now it has actual tyres, which is very handy. It is still really fun to drive, and then when it gets wet, it can just be this little sort of fun little drifting machine as well. So I think if you do want a sporty car that isn't a front-wheel drive car, it just doesn't really put a foot wrong at all. I would get the manual. You're gonna have to cop the fact that it doesn't have all of that safety technology, yes, which is disappointing, but the manual is the way to go. The auto is just a little bit pedestrian. You may as well just not bother with it. Now, let me know what you reckon about this. Have you bought one? What's it been like so far? And is the ownership experience any good? I'm very keen to hear from you guys all the time. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you share it with your mates, hit the like button, and if you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel. But until next time, take it easy.